we dive into today's powerful conversation, I want to share something close to my heart. This January, I will be hosting a transformational Christian women's retreat in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, called From Calling to Confidence. It's a sacred space for women of faith to rest, realign, and rise into their God-given calling with clarity, boldness, and community. If you've been feeling that nudge, like God is calling you for higher, but you're not sure how to take the next step, this retreat was made for you. You'll be poured into by powerful guest speakers, enjoy luxurious 5-star, all-inclusive accommodations, and even have the opportunity to be featured on live TV. Yes, really. You can learn more at the link in the show notes. Now, speaking of rising into your purpose, today's guest embodies what it means to ignite confidence and lead with authenticity. Claudia Wyatt, known as the enthusiasm igniter and self-doubt eraser, is a powerhouse in confidence, leadership, and has 2 decades of experience in coaching. She's here to help you follow your inner compass, own your story, and walk in bold belief. Let's get into it. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is my jam, and anything that I can do to light everybody up, I'm in.
Yes, I love that. So, I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing these days. Right before we went online, you were mentioning you're headed to Vegas, you're speaking on stages, you're podcasting, you're coaching, you're consulting, you're stepping into your confidence and clarity and purpose with some boldness there. So I love this story because it's such a great example for so many women. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on in Claudia's world right now.
Claudia likes to keep her hands in many pies. I have a lot of energy. I'm known for my energy, but I like exploring new things. I like taking chances and risks and diving into something new, because every time I do that, I discover a part of myself I didn't know was there. And it's so cool to try something that you didn't even think was something that was on your radar. And all of a sudden it becomes one of the best things you've ever done, or it becomes your new favorite thing. And you just learn so much about yourself. And that's one of the things that I've noticed in multiple ways with myself and with other people that I've worked with. We hold ourselves back because we think this is what we are doing. This is what we're supposed to do. This is it. And then when we don't get into that and go, oh, there might be something else out there. This is it. This isn't it. That's when we really discover who we are. But when we hold ourselves back, we're missing out. And it's not just missing out as in, I should have been doing all these things that other people are doing. It's missing out on our own purpose, because there's so much more to our journey than what's right in front of us.
Wow, absolutely. You're reading my mind. It's so timely because so many people right now are feeling stuck. And I feel like people are waiting for the confidence to come. And if I just get confident enough or bold enough, I'll take that next step. But I feel like you're right on track. The reality is that confidence is the byproduct of owning it, right? It doesn't come by osmosis. It doesn't come out of the air or the ether. We have to step into the things that scare us a little bit and sometimes get out of our comfort zones and out of our own way. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Nothing good happens in your comfort zone. It's boring. It's just fine. It is what it is. But that whole thing with, I'm going to wait and then I'm going to get confidence. Your confidence is already in you. You just need to bring it out. And if you explore and try new things, regardless of the outcome, regardless of judgment, guilt, or shame, or whatever you think that you've created in this brain of yours that's going to happen, you are missing out on so much more knowledge. Gratitude, knowledge, learning new things. It's all part of experience, and good or bad. And so many things we miss out on because if it's not going to be perfect, or it's not going to be this, grand gesture, then we're not going to do it. Or, well, I could fall flat on my face. So what? Do it. Because at least then you'll go, okay, I tried it, which is a win for you. But what did you learn?
Yeah.
It's that wisdom that tells you what you're meant for. And it keeps you from feeling stuck because you're always jumping outside of the box. Again, regardless of the outcome. That's the problem, is we get so limited by this outcome of, if it's not going to be perfect, I'm not going to do it. Does anyone really know what perfect is? Because that's not real. Perfectionism is a myth. It's about growth. That's the key.
Absolutely. I heard somebody, I wish I could remember. I never remember who said the quote, but he had the best quote. He said, if you're not embarrassed by your first launch, like your first product or whatever it is you put out, then you launched too late. You need to be a little embarrassed, in retrospect, as you look back and you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. But it's good because it meant you grow, you learn from it, right?
Absolutely. I can say that about some of the first videos I shot, the first posts I put up. I had no idea what I was doing on social media in the beginning. I was posting a lot of pictures of my dog. I was like, I don't know what's happening here. But the more I started letting my truth out, my content became almost my public journal. It was my own healing journey by letting these things out. And I was doing it for me. And that's the key, is you shouldn't be doing it for other people. You should be doing it, whatever you're doing, for yourself, for whatever that means to you. And as I started doing that, I started healing my own heart. I started healing my own brain. I started trying new things. And that's when people reached out to me and said, that really meant something to me. I've been there. I felt like I was alone in this. Our words, our stories, our mistakes, other people can relate to them. And it helps everyone then get on this path, because it creates this momentum of confidence, because people see you did it, then I can do it too.
Oh, I love that. You become someone's hero, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm always saying, put on your cape, because we are all heroes in our own right, and we can rewrite our comeback story anytime. So put on your cape and be your own hero.
I love that. Well, there's a reason why confidence is your thing and why it's my thing. It usually comes from a place of adversity. It comes from lacking it at some point in time in your life, maybe something like that. So I know you've got all of these amazing things now, and I couldn't be talking to a more confident, vivacious, bold person. And I love that. But I would love for you to take us back in time a little bit when things were a little different for you, Claudia.
Yeah, definitely. The person that you see now was missing for a long period of time. I came out of the womb this way. Like, I grew up this way. I was a very, enthusiastic kid, trying new things and fearless. And then, you get a little bit older and you start to hear other people in your head, and you start to doubt yourself a little bit. And then you get caught up in this, I need to be a certain way. And then you get caught up in people who aren't there for your best interest, and they start stifling you, and you start allowing it because you want to fit in, or you want to, people please. I mean, was the people pleaser of all time, like a master of it. And then things started getting hard. I got into 2 very toxic marriages. I had several deaths in my family. I had this decade of dark. And I didn't know what to do with it, because I'd never experienced that kind of darkness before. I was living in the shadow. And the more dark it got, the smaller I became, and the more muted. And the vibrancy and the energy was gone. And at some point, I completely lost myself. I would look in the mirror and go, who are you? What happened to you? You used to be fun. But I just didn't have enough energy to fight it. It was in there. I just couldn't bring it out. And the more I surrounded myself in these toxic situations, the smaller and smaller I got, and the more withdrawn, until I barely could get off the couch. I had enough energy every day to get up and go to work and take care of my dog and, take care of the things that I needed to take care of. I had bills to pay. I had, responsibilities. I was able to do that, but it was exhausting pretending I was fine all day, every day, because I was so consumed with shame and guilt of who I was, because I didn't know, that I was avoiding everything. I was avoiding conversations. I became the master of deflection. because I didn't want anybody to ask about me, because I didn't want anybody to know that something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew it didn't feel right.
Wow.
And one day I kind of snapped out of it, and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. This isn't who I am. I'm tired of being controlled by this outcome. I'm done. And that was the spark. And then from there, I was like, you got to figure this out.
Wow. That is so profound. I relate to that so much. And, it's these external things in our lives, whether it's the people we hang around with, whether it's school, relationships, family, even, that compress you, right? And they can take a really big person with a lot of energy and enthusiasm and confidence, and slowly over time, what we allow, right, in our lives, even if it's our own lack of boundaries, starts to diminish, right? Our potential. I know.
Yeah,
And it's
guilty on all counts.
Me too. I like the fact that you use the word spark. That's really a special word for me. I reference it in my first book, How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power. A stick of dynamite doesn't need a forest fire to make it usable and to cause a lot of, to make it live out its purpose, right?
Yeah.
It just needs a spark. And I think human beings are the same way. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have a ton of motivation like we think we do. Sometimes it's just that little tiny spark within us that says, you know what? I want more. And today I'm choosing myself. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. That's basically where it started for me, was that spark led to a walk. And it was one day getting off the couch as opposed to just staying there and going, you know what? I need to get outside. And I took the walk. And it was like I had never walked before in my life. It was like the skies open, the sun was out, the birds were singing. And as I was walking and being present, because that's not where I wasn't present this whole time. I was living in the dark in my own head, rent free. And I stopped and just paused in that beauty and said, okay, if this is it, we're going to choose to not be in the darkness anymore, and we're going to be in this beautiful light, then we need to make some serious changes. We have got to break these patterns. I always say patterns are meant to be broken, not bent. We cannot bend to our will. We have to actually do the work and get in it and get messy. And I love that you said allow, because I am a big believer in that in my coaching, especially. And I speak about it as well. I had to get real with what I was allowing, because that's the thing, is these things were happening. There were other people involved, but I was allowing it. And I didn't realize that. It was the people pleasing and the zero boundaries, because I had none, and not understanding who I was. And I kept trying to be for other people, which you can't do that. You have got to take care of yourself in order to take care of other people. And not everyone is meant to be in your life or for long term. Some people are there to teach you a lesson and to move on. Other people are there, and you really realize when you're going through something difficult like this, who your real people are. And that was something I had to discover on my own. So I was making these mistakes, but I was ready to learn from it. And it was hard. I'm not going to tell you the work was easy and, it was all sunshine and rainbows. That's a lie. It was very hard. There was a lot of times there was tears and there was frustration. I remember answering some questions. I'm a big believer in questions. And I was asking myself these questions, and I was like, I don't do that. And I walked away from it, put it down, and I was outside and I was doing something. And I was like, oh, I do that. That's me. I do it. And I didn't even realize I do it, because I'd gotten so caught up in that pattern, that loop. I didn't even realize I was self-sabotaging. And then I said, okay, well, now that we have awareness, that's the other key. First, you got to, make the decision to choose and do it. And then you have to start taking action steps. Then I had to go, okay, now we need to actually start fixing some of these things. But you can't fix things if you don't know what they are.
That's right. Ooh, so much wisdom in that. And that's, action is essential for building confidence, right? But sometimes it's not the first step. Sometimes it's the ownership, the acknowledgement, the responsibility, right?
Yes.
Because even if we take action, but we lack ownership, then we could have wasted energy, and we could have a lot of, goals in 100 different directions and, delude ourselves. So I think it's really important to have that ownership mentality first, and, understanding what is blocking us, even if it's ourselves. Boundaries are a huge thing. I used to be the same way as you. Extreme people pleaser, zero boundaries. Now I absolutely love boundaries. Boundaries are my favorite thing, right? And if somebody crosses your boundary, even if it's a client, right, which happens because we're coaches and consultants, you have to put up your boundaries. And here's the thing about boundaries, nobody respects your boundaries until you respect them first. You have to put up those boundaries. And let me tell you, it is so freeing when you do. Oh, am I preaching to the choir or what?
Yeah, I literally, once I realized that boundaries were something that were actually not only protecting me, but they were protecting other people, I was like, why didn't you have these before? Like, where didn't they exist? There's a funny story that I tell often when I'm talking, because my mom and I was the one, like I'm the fixer in the family, and everyone calls me to do the things because I can do the things. And that was something that was always getting in the way of me doing anything else, because if somebody said jump, I was right there, and how can I do it? And I remember one day I was knee deep in work. I had so many things going on, deadlines and projects, and my mom called and she said, "Can you come over and hang my curtains?" And I froze, because this is like in the beginning stages of me doing the work. And I was like, boundaries are just like in my head. And it's the outcome. It's the fear of what I had already thought was going to happen if I said no. So I got the courage and the confidence, and I stepped in and I said, I really don't have time for that right now. I'm in the middle of a few other things. I said, but if it's something that you need help with, I could schedule that for another time. I could help you with that later. And she stopped and she goes, "That's okay. I'll ask somebody else." And I froze and I said, "What? I go, you have other people that help you? Who are these people?" Like, I have a family. I have other people in my family who could help. But it was always me. And it always continued to be me because I always said yes and dropped everything, which took the help of other people completely away from them. It might have been something they wanted to do or they had time to do. And I just was like, okay, I thought this was going to turn into a huge argument, me not being willing to help, me being selfish or whatever those old stories are that I had told myself. The outcome was like, no big deal. I'll get somebody else. And I was like, are you for real?
It really is that, like, eye-opening, and
it's that simple.
Yes, and it's the hardest thing to do, I think, is to set a boundary. But once you do, there is absolutely no going back, because that one experience, you're so right on, that happens almost every single time. And if it doesn't happen, let's say worst case scenario, and somebody decides to, take a distance because they're not using you anymore, they can't receive your energy. Good.
Yes.
That's actually the best case scenario. It acts as an automatic filter for you. And trust me, whoever's listening to this who's struggling with boundaries right now and people pleasing, the best thing you can do is put an automatic filter in. I mean, your tap water has a filter, right?
Yeah.
Before you drink it, you want to do the exact same thing in your life, because again, the people we let in dictate our future outcomes. So if you love your future outcomes, if you have these really big goals and dreams, the best thing you can do is set your boundaries and understand who's blocking your success, who's standing in the way. And sometimes that's our own selves, right?
Absolutely. We definitely can get in our own way. But I love that you said that, because I learned the hard way on multiple times. The people that were in my life weren't meant to be there, and they were completely gone when I needed them. And that was the thing. When you're the one who's always ready to help and being the fixer and the people pleaser, and you're there for them, you attract a lot of narcissists, which is really, really fun. I didn't realize how many were in the world until I started doing the work and realized I was completely surrounded by them. Like, those were my people, but they weren't my people. And once you realize that and you let them go, You open up your world for the people who are meant to be in your life. You start attracting your people, your community. And I met so many people that I was like, where have you been my whole life? Well, they couldn't get to me because there was this wall of narcissism around me because I was stuck in people pleasing mode. But once I let that go and I realized, wow, a little reflection on these relationships, they were never in it for me. They were in it for them because I could do things for them. But when it got dark for me and I did reach out for help, they didn't know what to do with me because I couldn't be there for them.
Yeah. That's powerful. So you started off confident. The world got in the way. The environment shifted. Narcissism happened. You were surrounded, enveloped really by narcissistic people. And then you started putting up boundaries, starting ditching perfectionism and relearning confidence because it is a skill. And then that shift happened where it was a catalyst for change. I would love to know a little bit about that season of your life when that shift happened and when you started saying, you know what, I'm going to own this. I'm going to own myself, own my choices, take responsibility, and step boldly into my calling with confidence. I would love to hear a little bit of that season.
You know, that season is probably the best season of my entire life. I call it the yes to me season because every single thing that happened during that time became the launch, like you said, the catalyst of where I am now. And it started momentum. The more I did the work and the more I started stepping into myself, the more I started meeting people who also were either doing the work or were willing to help me go further because they were seeing something in me. And that's kind of like I said with my writing, I started putting that out there and I was doing my healing. Well, that turned into, do you have a company? Are you coaching? And I was like, no, I don't do that. I have a day job. Like, I'm just talking. I'm doing the work and this is what's happening. And that kept happening until it made my brain go, I think there's something here. And I started looking into it and I launched a company without even thinking about it. Talking about jumping into fear. I literally just went to the bank and went to the lawyer and said, let's go. And I was like, ta-da, we have a company today. Like, this is what we're doing. Now I had to backtrack on a lot of things that I skipped, but still, I just went for it. I just said, yes, people are asking me for help. I need to figure out how to do this. I know this is my purpose because I love it. There's such a fire in doing what I'm doing with people. And getting my voice out there, again, became more healing. And someone had read something that I had written and reached out and said, hey, I really like what you've got to say. I would love it if you'd be on my podcast. I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure, I'll do it. No idea, yet again, jumping right in.
Yep.
I didn't know how to do anything with it. I didn't understand the tech. I did nothing, but I was like, let's try it. And I was on the show and I was having so much fun because clearly I'm a talker. And someone reached out in the audience and said, I love your energy. Would you do my show? And that just became more and more and more. And that's, podcasts are my love. Like, I love being on shows. It's so much fun, which then made me go, you know, I haven't been on stages since I was a kid. I was a big theater kid, you know, music and dancing and all the things, performance. And I was like, about time we get back on one of these stages, isn't it? And I was at a conference once with a bunch of colleagues and they were like, why aren't you on the stage? This was 5 years before I started my own company. And I was just like, never really occurred to me. You know, I speak at events in the area and, you know, I train and do all these things, but I wasn't really thinking about that until I got on a stage. And then I was like, I remember what this is like. It was like that inner child who was doing all these things and prancing around came back. And so then I was like, well, now I got to run with this too. So it's interesting what happens when you step outside that box. The world starts to expand. And then there's more things that happen because you do something and your energy carries and you meet people and then they have ideas and then you have ideas and then the ideas become bigger and bigger and more things happen and there's more opportunities that you never even imagined. It got me in magazines. It got me on awards. It was just like all these things just started happening for me. It was my reward for making it through the dark to the other side. That's why I always say, you know, hey, a lot of wisdom happens in the shadows, but you have to make it through in order to get here.
Absolutely. The roots grow in the dark, right? And It's such a powerful thing. I actually think we may be separated at birth because we have such similar stories, right?
I love it.
Um, yeah, speaking on stage was my ultimate biggest fear. And I remember, when right before I took the stage for the first time, I cried in the bathroom. I did. It was miserable, right? But I did it anyway, and I just jumped because I said, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And that's a mantra I repeat in my head every single day. If nothing changes, nothing changes. It causes me to pick up the phone when I don't want to. It causes me to post when I'm afraid. It causes me to share my story or start a podcast or write a book, even when I'm unsure of what the outcome is going to be. Because guess what? There's always uncertainty in life. You cannot plan for everything. You just cannot. And, you just have to jump. And when you feel the compulsion, when you feel that calling, and especially, you're getting the validation like, hi, why aren't you on stage? You should be on stage. Then it's validation that you should probably listen to it because other people are acknowledging something within you that you don't even necessarily notice, which is powerful, right?
Yeah, I love that because I've been there. Classic overthinker. Like I'm a great coach because I've had all the things. I still have some of the things. And I still have to work through those layers. I'm like, I can relate to that. Been there. The first time that I got on stage, I was very excited and I was all fired up. And of course, there was things that I didn't anticipate being a problem. I just thought it was going to go exactly the way that I wanted it to go. I practiced, I was ready. I was like, okay, I had my, outfit on and my A game. And then there was problems. And as I'm going along in my speech and there's problems, I was like, I paused in my head and said, screw it. You're going to have to just figure this out because this is not going the way you had planned at all. So just talk. And I just literally shifted right in that moment, started doing my own thing. And it was still in alignment with what I was doing, but it wasn't exactly the way that I went. You have got to be able to think on your feet because things are going to happen. Challenges are going to happen. And things that you haven't expected because you haven't experienced or encountered before are going to happen. Do not let it break you. Because I could have frozen completely in that moment. I could have started bawling on stage and, ran off or whatever. And I was like, no, you earned being here. You came here for a reason. You will do it. And boom, I shifted. And it was funny because, of course, when I was done, I was like, that was horrible. That was the worst thing that ever happened because I went into that doom and gloom mode. And this woman came up to me after and she said, the whole time I was watching you, I was thinking, I don't know how anyone could be that confident on stage. And I was like, literally, I was dying inside, but that's okay. But thank you so much for saying that to me. And it just made me go, perception in my head, completely different perception in their head. But here's the thing. I'm a real person. I'm not a robot. So I'm going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to go the way that I want them to go. This scenario that I've created needs to go in the trash because that's not real. I just need to let it happen and be present. And it wasn't until the playback came that I watched it, because you have to watch your own film. We're just like athletes. And I was like, that was nothing like what was going on in my head. I go, that was way better than I thought it was. I was like, this is horrible. They're never going to ask me to speak here again. No, it was great. And I was like, okay, celebrate the win in two ways. One, you celebrate the growth. You figured it out. You did it. You stepped past the fear and you did it anyway. And two, there's growth in what you just did because it was really good. Can you get better? Can you improve? Always. But don't let that take the win of doing it away from you, because regardless of the outcome, you did it.
You did it. Absolutely. And regardless of what happens, it's something to be proud of. Anytime you step out in growth, right? It's an opportunity to discover something about yourself that you didn't know existed, that you weren't sure you were capable of. And, none of us are born knowing how to do things. It just is experience. And sometimes you don't know your calling until you try a lot of things and fail a couple of times. Podcasting is an example of that. Same with speaking for myself as well. This is something I started 2 years ago. And I thought, well, it'd be a great thing to start. Let's see how it goes. It quickly developed into a passion and a real sense of purpose. And the more people I interview, the more it reignites that spark within me, that fire of curiosity. And it helps me keep going and stay motivated, even though it's a lot of work, right? I treat my podcast like a business, as you should, just like you should treat your speaking career as a business. But the more you do it, the more you try, the more people you interview, the better you become over time. And eventually it's a work of art. I think, I think it was Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. Somebody quote me. Again, I'm terrible referencing quotes and people. I just can't ever remember. But it was either Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci who said, if you knew how much work was put into it, you would never call it art.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow. Think about that. You would never call it art. You would never call it genius, because it's so much work and depth that goes into these things to really, again, step out of our comfort zones and to become that next best version of ourselves. But the good news is it's possible, right?
Yes, and living proof right here. Living
proof, right? Both of us. And it's so refreshing because I love these real authentic conversations. Because so often, Claudia, we look at people who are really confident. And this is how I used to perceive confident people. I used to think that must be nice. I guess they were born with it. Maybe that's something that they are just lucky to have and I just don't have. But I think regardless of who we are, it only takes just that little spark. And then the spark becomes a wildfire if you nurture it over time with the right conditions, right?
Yes, I actually have a quote that I wrote that says, all it takes is a spark for you to realize you are the flame. Because that's really what it comes from, is that inner you. And once that starts moving, it gets bolder and brighter and bigger. And then you realize it's you.
It's you all along. All along. I love that. So powerful. Where can people find you online?
Yes.
Because I know people are going to want to check out Claudia.
Please check me out. I love it. It's fantastic. My website's under ClaudiaWyatt.com. I'm on LinkedIn under Claudia Wyatt and my Claudia Wyatt coaching as well. I have 2 different profiles there. Instagram, the Claudia Wyatt, and Facebook is Claudia Wyatt, as well as the Claudia Wyatt coaching. So I'm all over the place. And yes, definitely come check me out. And if I can help in any way, please let me know.
I love that. And hire Claudia to speak at your next event.
Yes, I promise to bring the energy. That's what I do.
I think it'd be fun if you and I did a speech together, but I don't know. Could the world contain us? I'm not sure. We might be a videographer's worst nightmare.
I think it would be amazing, and I think we should do it. You put that out there now, so that's happening. We're doing it. I don't know what it is, but it's happening. I'm all for it, so that's great. But we could, break the internet. It could be possible.
It could be possible. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Claudia, for being an amazing guest on this episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. Guys, if you liked this show, if you saw the value, if this helped you in any way, like, subscribe, follow, leave a review. I read each review personally and love them all so much. They mean so much to me. So please do us a favor and share this far and wide so we can help more people up-level their lives and step into their purpose and their boldest calling. We will see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you.